listening to the Viva Alberto's podcast with Jake Wood, Gabe Simons, and Scott Plaza. The Viva Alberto's podcast.
Welcome into the Viva Alberto's podcast. My name is Jake Wood, and I write for VivaAlbertos.com. I am the host of the show, and I am joined by fellow writer Gabe Simons. We will be rejoined by Scott Plaza very soon. He's been enjoying some extra summer family time while school is out, as he is a teacher, so happy for him to be able to spend that extra time away. If you enjoy this episode, please be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. We are available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all of your favorite audio streaming platforms. Today's show, we are joined once again by one of my personal favorites. You can hear him on the Dave Glover Show on 1120 KMOX every Monday through Friday from 1 to 4 p.m. You can also hear him on the Redbird Rush Hour from 5 to 6 with Matt Pauley. And occasionally, he will work into the Sports Open Line show later in the evenings as well. Please welcome back 1120 KMOX on-air and sports personality, Kevin Wheeler.
Oh yeah, we want retribution! Oh yeah, we want retribution! Oh, yeah, we ran out of patience! Boil up with the cold hard hatred!
Yay. No, I gotta tell you, I'm probably what you would call the everyday utility man, right? Like
You are the Jose Fermin
I got
of
5 hours a day,
KMOX.
4 of them on one show, 1 of them on another show, and then sometimes I do pre and post, and sometimes I do Sports Open Line, like you point out, so a little bit of a hybrid, but that's okay. I like playing a lot of positions. It's kind of great. As long as I'm in the lineup, I'm good, man.
As long as no one asks you or openly criticizes Chris Kerber, I think things typically go pretty well, but...
Yeah, don't criticize my friends to my face. What do you think I'm going to do?
That was wild. Whenever that happened, that was wild.
I can't remember
absolutely.
who it was, but man, yeah, you
I don't know. All I remember was he took over the show, he started trashing Curbs, and you were like, we're not doing this. Like, I'm happy to answer your questions, but we're not doing this. And so I was like, oh yeah, Kevin's fired up today.
It doesn't take much, but that's definitely going to make that light switch go off for sure.
You know, Kevin, you were sort of our guinea pig for our first video episode back in February, and now that we pretty well have this new platform figured out, welcome back. How have you been digesting this Cardinals team recently? Is it more of the stomach turning, you know, it kind of got a little bit of a tummy ache, or do you have full-blown cyclospora and it just is crap everywhere for you right now?
Well, it's not that bad. Lately, it's clearly been less. You know, I mean, and by lately, I would say the last 5 or 6 weeks. You know, it's just the offense is inconsistent. It's obviously better on the road than it is at home, but in reality, that all balances out because your pitching's better at home and, you know, a little bit less on the road. So in reality, you're kind of the same team. It's not about how many runs you're scoring or giving up. It's about how many you're giving up versus how many you're allowing in that particular game. If I'm just looking at what I've seen lately, there's a lot to worry about. You know, the offense hasn't been very good here, for about 4 or 5 weeks, especially in the month of July, although Jordan Walker keeps going, which is nice. But the pitching kind of comes and goes. The bullpen's been a real problem now for a good long while. So if I'm looking at like the progression, you know, a month and a half ago, there was a lot better feeling about this season. There were a lot more going right. There were a lot more things you could count on, especially right after Newt got back. So right after Newt got back, and then they put Church in center full time and sent Victor Scott down. When they sent Nolan Gorman down, the lineup started to look a little better. But Newt's been slumping for several weeks now, and Crooks hasn't hit much, and he's not even getting the same opportunity to play that Pages did before the switcheroo that they made. He's only catching like 2 games a week, which is not really going to give us a good look at what he's capable of. But I'd say that bigger picture, if I zoom out and I'm saying, okay, what did I think of this team in spring training? What do I think of it now? The bigger picture, 10,000-foot view is a lot more positive. Right? I mean, you've discovered that you have 2-star players. We didn't know that on opening day. We knew J.J. Weatherholt was really good. We didn't know he's going to be one of the best all-around players in baseball as a rookie. And we knew that Jordan Walker had talent, but we had no idea. I mean, look, at the end of spring, you guys probably had the same conversation the rest of us did, which is, does he even belong in the majors? Right? I mean, and again, not about getting rid of him, trading him, cutting him, just like, does he need to go down and get fixed? and then he shows up and plays like an all-star for 4 months. So the fact that you've now established two really young position players that are stars is, to me, the most important thing, more important than what you get at the trade deadline, more important than what your bullpen looks like or what the rotation is. You actually have now two centerpieces to construct your lineup around. One of them is an all-around player. One of them is just ridiculous power, right? Like top of the spectrum power. And that's something they haven't had. So it's not going great now. There's a lot to criticize. There's a lot that we'll talk about, I'm sure. But big picture, I think you're set up right. And then you throw on top of that all of the developments in the farm system. I mean, you look up and down the list, you got 5 guys blowing 100, making a start every 5th day. You got a lefty who just hit 103, and there's only one other lefty that's ever done that, and that guy's name is Aroldis Chapman, and he's going to the Hall of Fame. So when I kind of take the big picture and I step back and I look from that 10,000-foot view, it's hard to dislike what you're seeing. But, of course, the last month, as you're trying to decide whether you buy or sell or how much you buy or sell, you're kind of making the choices a little easier for Chaim Bloom in the sense that it's hard to make the decision to invest a lot right now. So maybe it makes sense to do it a little bit different way. But so, again, like, if you're trying to live within this season, then it's not great right now. If you're zooming out and you're like, okay, this is like, stage 2 of a rebuild, now it's like, all right, now it's a positive view. So I guess it depends on which way you're looking at it.
Yeah, Gabe, what are you, as you're watching the season kind of unfold, how are you feeling about not only the Cardinals now, but also kind of the optimistic view that Kevin's kind of taking right now, like long-term as well?
I mean, he pretty much said how I feel, which is that, like, when we were approaching the season, we were a little bit more optimistic than, like, Vegas was, where I think the over-under was like 70 wins. I don't know that many of us were like, we're going to be 500 at the deadline, right? We're going to be somebody who will have to debate whether or not to sell or buy. I don't think many of us really expected that at all. And I think it's hard to – I think, like, baseball's such a long season, and no matter how good or bad you are, there's always points where you really buy into a team or you really, like, get really down on a team. And I think it's better to just take the overall approach where you're just like, okay, how are we making progress from where we were? Right. And I think overall we are definitely making progress because, as you said, Jordan Walker has arrived. I didn't know. I thought we might have to be moving on from him, not this year, but like he was really bad the last 2 years, and now he made an all-star team and he won the home run derby, and he's still chugging along, and he'll go in little slumps and then he'll break out of them real fast, and that's really that's a sign where you can buy into him a little bit. And then JJ Weatherholt, his offense has been good, but clearly his defense has been the star, where that's why he's probably going to win the Rookie of the Year, because he's pretty much an equal hitter to Sal Stewart when you take into account park effects, no matter what Reds fans think. But Weatherholt's defense is unbelievable, and now you have Mason Wynn, whose bat hasn't been here this year. I'm probably more optimistic about his bat than most people in the future. But when you have that middle infield defense, I think your pitching is going to play up, especially with guys like Andre Palante, where they get ground balls all the time. And I just think I think the overall approach, when you just look at how the season's going and where we were at the beginning of the season, is absolutely the right approach. And I think we could still be pretty positive about how the season has went, personally.
Yeah, so let's kind of continue on this trek of, like, positives tonight, right? So outside of Matthew Liberatore, you're getting really solid, dependable starting pitching just about every single night. You think about Hunter Dobbins, clearly seems ready for an extended run in the rotation, as does Quinn Matthews, who is showing, like, really improved command in AAA over the last 6 to 8 weeks or so. How do the Cardinals open up spots for their younger starters ready to show their stuff? Obviously, with it being trade deadline season, that could be one potential avenue, but do you think if this kind of instability that Matthew Liberatore continues to show in the kind of snowball type inning, that perhaps he might be, it might be up for debate for him to potentially see some time at AAA to kind of reset himself as well? I get the I'm probably sure I know where you're going to go with this, Kevin, is like, what are you going to learn from watching him strike out AAA batters all the time? I get that and understand that, but also, how is he, like, what is the appropriate way to allow him the setting to work through kind of those snowball innings where it just gets away from him?
Yeah, personally, I'd have no issue with sending him to AAA. They're not going to do it. I mean, they've been very clear that they think the best place to fix guys is at the major league level. And in some cases, they've been right. In other cases, they've been wrong. You know, they've said that about Matt Swanson, and it ain't getting fixed, you know. But, you know, Kyle Leahy did get fixed at the big league level, right? Early in the year, he wasn't very good. The last, 6 weeks, 5-6 weeks, he's been unbelievably good. So, you know, I think they probably want him with their major league staff to make these changes. But it's not happening. I mean, it happens for 2 or 3 starts, and then all of a sudden it goes away. He can't command the fastball. The fastball has nothing to it. He's got one of the worst fastballs in baseball. If you look at Baseball Savant, his fastball's in the bottom 3 or 4% of all of baseball. And he throws 3 of them, and none of them are good. So maybe pick one and command it. You know, I think there are things that can be done to get usefulness out of him, to make him a little bit better. But it took until they started having Herrera catch him before they started changing the pitch mix, which I don't understand, right? What they were doing before wasn't working, and now they're pitching more backwards, right? They're more off-speed heavy, more breaking ball heavy. The fastball's being used less. I don't know why that took 3.5 months to figure out. But see, even with that, you look at the last time out, and he just can't get out of big problems. He just doesn't have a path out because he doesn't have special velo. Although the velo is fine, it's average. For a major league starter, it's fine. You can work with 94.5, right? It's not that low. McGreevy works with less than that and does just fine. The problem is McGreevy has command, not just control, but command within the zone. Right, getting very specific spots where you're going to throw the baseball and not just throwing it into the big rectangle, because a lot of things in the big rectangle get hit, and that's where Liberatore is. He can throw it into the big rectangle. He doesn't walk too many guys. It's not good, but it's not ridiculously bad. Again, right around league average-ish, maybe a little below, a little above, depending on what week you're looking. And I do think it's important that other guys get looks, whether it's Hunter Dobbins, who's shown nothing but what McGreevy showed last year, which is he's got nothing left to do in AAA. He's not advanced age-wise, but he's not 21. He's at a time where he kind of needs to be in the big leagues, and you got to find a role for him. And outside of the deadline, it's probably what they're waiting for, guys. They're probably waiting to see what the deadline holds to make that kind of determination. And that'll probably impact Quinn Matthews, too. Although with Matthews, you have the added thing where he's not on the 40-man. And if he's not on the 40-man and there's a work stoppage that lasts into the regular season, he can keep pitching, right? So if he's on the 40-man, once you bring him up, he's out if you're locked out. He can't pitch. Sure. He can't pitch at Memphis.
But also, after they designated Scott Blewett for assignment recently, that opened up an open 40-man.
Oh, yeah, I'm not worried about that. You can create spots.
Yeah,
it's not about that. It's more about
it's an easy a way to add him, but I understand what you're saying.
It's more about whether or not you want to take the risk of him having to sit and watch next year instead of playing at Memphis if there's a stoppage that lasts into the regular season. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they'll solve it before the regular season, but it's just another thing to stack. Would it change my mind? No, because he's 26 or about to be. So I don't think you want to just wait that much longer on him. So would I send Liberatore down? Yeah, I probably would. I've seen a lot. I mean, if you go back to last June, he's in the bottom 10 of starting pitchers with enough innings to match him, right? So if you look at the number of innings he's thrown in that time, he's in the bottom 10 in almost everything. ERA, expected ERA, fielding independent ERA, hard hit rate against, you name it. It's like 7 baseball months. This isn't just a few bad starts this year. It's not just one bad inning every other outing. It's been going on for 30 starts. At some point, he's got to make the adjustment. He's good enough. He's got ability. I mean, he throws hard enough. His off-speed stuff is good when he can land it. The problem is he doesn't land it enough, and the fastball gets hit when that's all he's got to rely on to throw in the zone. So I don't think they're going to do it. They've been very clear, like pushing back against the idea. But we'll see, I guess. They do have that opportunity to move a guy like May to create a spot for either Dobbins or Matthews or a rotating cast of those guys if they want to take a look at him.
Kevin, I do want to ask you, because you are, a coach, and you do understand the mechanical side of things. When you're watching Matthew Liberatore, do you see anything specific in his how he approaches the pitch that is leading to some of his struggles? Because for me, I notice a lot of high arm side misses, which tells me that he's rushing to the plate too much. Like his arm isn't getting through all the way to finish his pitches and really command it low in the zone. Are you seeing the same thing? Are you seeing anything where you're picking up on any kind of mechanical issues from him?
If anything, it's more of a timing thing. It's not like anything that he's doing is particularly egregious, at least not from what I'm looking at. I think I think he gets out of sync sometimes, and then that leads to him spraying the ball, especially to the arm side. But this was the scouting report on him when he was a prospect. The scouting report on him was he doesn't have great fastball command, and it takes away from his ability to work every hitter differently. And to me, that's if he could just do a better job of throwing fastballs where they need to be on a regular basis, I think his numbers get better real fast. But he doesn't land the off speed in the zone enough. If you look at the slider can be fantastic, the curveball can be fantastic, but they're not. It's a weird thing to look at it, right? You see a slider and opponents are hitting 218 against it, and they're hitting 186 against the curveball. Well, then why is his off-speed run value, his breaking run value, in the bottom 5 or 6% in baseball? It's because it's not landing enough, right? The pitches are quality. They have good spin. They have good shape. They just aren't where they need to be often enough. So there's too many hangers, and there's too many hittable fastballs.
Gabe, what about you for Matthew Liberatore specifically? I guess we can kind of hyper-focus on him. Is like, if you were Chaim Bloom or Ollie Marmol, however you'd want to approach that, like how would you kind of address that situation with Matthew Liberatore?
So it's interesting because we have an example in the rotation of sticking with the guy who had terrible numbers, right, and broke through in Andre Palante. And they're actually, I looked at Palante's stats. They're very similar to what Liberatore's stats are this year. He had a 5-something ERA, a high 4 FIP, and then the xFIP was more playable because both of them had allowed home runs at a higher rate than league average, which probably deserved, but that's just the one stat you could look at and be like, well, he's a below average starting pitcher if he plays to that. And then the weird thing about Liberatore for me that makes me kind of just want to stick with him for the whole year is he just has random moments where he just strikes out everybody. I don't understand that. That's the one thing I'm like.
He's got good stuff. He's got good breaking stuff. He makes too many mistakes.
Yeah, I know you're right, but it's like, well, is there really not a starter when this guy just strikes out 8, 9, 10 guys? His last 4 starts, he has 9 strikeouts. Let me look at this thing here real quick. Sorry. 9 strikeouts, 6 strikeouts, and 7 strikeouts. And there was a 3 strikeout one in there. But I'm like, how can this guy not start if he can just either miss bats or make people look at strikes to strike out all that that often? Because he has a lot of high strikeout games this year. In the case of last start, it was after he allowed 5 runs, literally after he allowed 5 runs. And then after that, he pitched good the rest of the game. And I'm just like, what is going on with you? Why? Just get it together for the whole start. Please, you clearly have it figured out for 3 or 4 innings, and then you don't have it figured out for the other. And I don't know how solvable that is, but I'm okay with giving him the rest of the year to see maybe something clicks. I don't know. You never know. And he pitched really well in the first half last year. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if we could figure out how to get back to that place, or I don't know if hitters figured him out. And maybe if his numbers look this bad, and of course Quinn Matthews and Hunter Dobbins are probably going to need a spot next year, maybe then I'll be like, okay, you should just be in the bullpen. Maybe you could be a multi-inning guy, but you should be in the bullpen, and then we'll replace Jojo Romero, and you could be our lefty. And you might even be better than Romero because Romero has his own inconsistencies too. But yeah, go ahead.
I think that kind of to the point that you were making also falls in line with kind of what Kevin was talking about too, is he has the raw stuff, right? We see it flashes really exciting, but it's the lack of consistency and the command in order to do so that is the really holding him back. And that's why I'm wondering it, like I asked, is it a command? Is there a mechanical adjustment that needs to be made? You kind of talked about there being a timing mechanism, or just kind of having the ability to find a different rhythm to how he approaches delivery to the plate. Could be something that could help him. The bullpen, like we referenced a little bit, has been awful coming out of the break, especially. You referenced Matt Swanson. Specifically, he has an ERA over 7 this season. That's 7. If a reliever can't even competently pitch in mop-up duty with no leverage, I don't understand the benefit of keeping him in St. Louis, but that also arises another question of, if not him, then who, right, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, they could call up Fernandez, and I think that's probably going to happen. I would think that's going to happen soon. I'm a huge fan of Matt Swanson. I think he's very, very gifted. I mean, when you're throwing upper 90s, and we saw for a full year last year how good he was, he's just not the same guy. And he's not lost any stuff. Velocity hasn't changed. It's not like it's, he must be pitching with an injury. He's another guy who I think sometimes his delivery gets out of whack, and lately it's not just sometimes, it's basically all the time. And he can't rein it back in. And again, you look at his problems, it's entirely about command. It's entirely about where the ball lands. It's not stuff. He's got a fastball that, top, 15-20% in baseball in terms of velo. It's not as effective this year as it was last year, right? So if you look at his fastball, his fastball is a sinker. But if you look at it last year, it was one of the best fastballs in the sport. One of the best fastballs in the sport.
Wasn't it like a plus 12 run difference or run value?
I think it was a plus 9. It was like top 15%, something like that. Average velocity was in the top 15%, right? His velocity, though, hasn't changed that much. It's only changed, maybe like 2 or 3/10 of a mile an hour. It's a little bit less than half a mile an hour that it's changed. But the effectiveness has dramatically changed, right? He's gone from a 157 average against the sinker and a 250 slug to 341, 516. Right? That's not the velocity difference. That's because he's not locating it, and he falls behind a lot, right? So when you're pitching behind, you're throwing it down the middle, and that's what he ends up having to do. And one thing that has changed with him is that his arm angle has dropped. And it's dropped 4%, which doesn't sound like a lot. 4 percentage points. It's dropped. I think it was like 32, 33 degrees last year. It's 28 now. So that can create more arm side run than you like, which has, watch his fastballs, right? Where do they end up? They end up missing off the plate to his arm side, and then you got to retune it and go right back down the middle. And I'm sure they're working on it. They know it. I mean, they're not the only ones. We're not the only ones that have access to that information, but we're the end of July, and he hadn't fixed it. And I think it's probably just, I don't want to say as simple as that, but I think that if he were to get his mechanics back to where they were last year, he gets more effective. But, we are where we are, and it ain't happened yet.
I think it's interesting. I also think the stretch out of the break really highlighted the value of Jojo Romero and his ability to handle those lefty lanes specifically. Who would have guessed that Jojo Romero's appendix was the secret to holding this thing together, right?
Man.
Gabe, like you touched on him. He has his moments where it kind of falls apart, but I really think that JoJo is as rock steady, dependable as you can get out of the bullpen, especially for a Cardinals bullpen that has so many question marks and kind of volatile profiles as they do.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I think he's probably thrown his last inning as a Cardinal, unless the deadline goes differently than I expect. Because I think you could trade guys who are currently injured.
You can. It comes with a little bit of complication, but yeah, you can.
Okay, and the injury he has is not like something that would scare teams away. I don't think, anyway. I could be wrong. But yeah, you're pitching poorly as Matt Swanson when they bring in Justin Brewer. I'm like, oh, thank God. So that because and then he loved that blue pit today. Oh man, that was frustrating. But no, yeah, I mean, I love JoJo. I mean, he goes through stretches where he can't get righties out at all, and those situations are obviously very, very frustrating. But and he'll walk guys. But I mean, he's a reliever. Like if these guys were better, they'd probably start games because that's where you put all the guys who don't have any control. You put them in the bullpen. I think our bullpen has more walks than our starters. Is that a correct stat?
It might. The innings totals are pretty similar, so it's possible.
Okay, so that's not as egregious as it sounds at first, but we do got a lot of high walk guys. But I mean, honestly, the bullpen being the reason for the downfall of this team is borderline a positive because that means everything else is going much better than expected.
It's also fixable.
Yeah, that was
Right.
going to be my point.
Yeah, bullpens
Yeah,
are fixable.
And they're random and like just because
Yeah.
like we could go with the same group this year as next year, and all of a sudden we might have
Yeah,
a top 10
Swanson could be an all-star next year. I mean, like the flipperoo that we've seen from him, could go back the other direction.
I also wanted to
Right.
kind of highlight the funny thing that you said in there just a minute ago, Gabe, was like you were relieved whenever Justin Brule came in. And if you go back to the end of May and everybody in St. Louis pretty much wanted Justin Brule gone, and now that we're into the end of July, and I realize the context of the conversation is, well, it's to relieve Matt Swanson, so like that, is obviously an upgrade. But if you look at like Brule's numbers over the last 2 months or something, he's got like an ERA right around 3, and like he has been solid, dependable, giving the Cardinals multiples. Like he's been exactly what you need out of a second lefty out of the bullpen.
Yeah, I was leading the charge on the guys. I was asking the question, how can you be a big leaguer if you throw 90 and you can't command it? Because that was the problem early in the year. I mean, we all saw the numbers in April and May, March, April, and May. I'm just lumping March in with April because it's such a small sample. But if you just throw everything before June 1st together, way too many walks. I think he had 13 walks and 17 strikeouts in those first 2+ months. But since then, he's been really good, man. I mean, a 164 in June, 365 ERA in July so far. 360 in May. So really, but May was a mix though, because there was some bad in there, but it was the early part of the month where he got hit pretty hard and it messed up the numbers. But really, since mid-May, he's been good. I mean, and that's a good point, Jake. As far as a second lefty, most teams don't have two elite lefties. Your second one is usually a little less, but he's been just fine in that role.
And what really appealed to me whenever you look at Justin Brule's profile on Baseball Savant, right? You go and look at those movement profiles, and nothing he throws is straight, right? Everything has really above average movement profiles to everything, and that can be valuable coming out in short stints. He doesn't necessarily have to throw 95, but if he misses barrels, if he's able to command the zone, if he's able to get hitters out, like that is a valuable commodity in a big league bullpen. And that's really just kind of all I have to say about that, to be honest with you. We could get into Riley O'Brien just a smidge, but I think we should jump over to the offense as well. Like, Riley has from June of last year up until about the end of April this year had a really, really incredible run of production. Starting at the beginning of May, it started to get a little shaky. He kind of started to lose it at certain points through May and June. He's kind of found a stable footing again. I know he had the one issue in LA, but outside of that, he's been pretty well back to locking things down, getting that the final 3 outs as it were. But I think that ultimately we'll talk about this in a little bit. We'll get into some of the trade deadline stuff. I think that he is a valuable enough commodity and is capable of doing a great job in late inning relief that I think that he is deserving of keeping that title of closer going forward.
Also, there's
I
no
wouldn't mess with that.
good option though, because I mean, like I like Jose Soriano. He blew a game recently too. Like,
George.
Yeah, right.
So like, I don't think there's another good option for the late innings. Honestly,
If we had Jose Soriano, I'd be starting him.
Yeah, no. The problem with, and again, you also right now you need Soriano in an earlier role because he also gets lefties really well.
Yep.
So, you need somebody outside of Brule that can be a matchup against a tough lefty in the 7th or 8th inning or even the 6th inning, depending on the circumstance. So it's a little easier to keep Riley in the 9th for that reason. But also, like, his problem's entirely command. Right? I mean, he started walking too many guys, and I think again, when I talk about mechanics for most things like pitchers, hitters, even catchers, with their footwork and their throwing mechanics, the first thing I want to look at when it comes to mechanics is the sequence happening correctly, right? Is it at the right pace? Are the right movements happening at the right time? Because we're always looking for, is his arm in the right spot, or is he opening up to it? Well, yeah, those things are things. They're all things, right? Mechanics are complicated. There's a lot going on. But you could have the right things in place but the wrong timing, and it jacks you up. So when you see Riley, you're seeing a little bit of a timing issue at times. And when he was early in the year, right, you look at the walk total. I think he had 4 walks in the first 2 months, and he's had 13 in the last 2 months. It's a pretty big difference, and he's probably the guy that's somewhere in between that, right? He's not the elite command guy, but he's also not this wild guy. But I also wouldn't hesitate to trade him if somebody gave me the kind of offer I need for a guy that has his kind of control, right? Because he's 31. This isn't a guy that you're going to have for the next 5 or 6 years. Relievers can last. That's not a problem. It's not like, he better move him before he runs out. But he's also a guy that has spent years dealing with physical problems. And if you're going to sell high, this is the year to sell high. I don't want them to trade Riley. I'm not saying go get rid of him. What I'm saying is if he has value to contenders at the moment and they're willing to pay you because of the velocity, the quality of the stuff, and the years of control, well, then it's probably a good idea to do it. And one thing the Cardinals have done consistently ever since the end of the Isringhausen era, they have developed their own closers from within all the time. And they've all been good, right? I mean, it doesn't matter who it is. They have found a way, from Fernando Salas to Edward Mujica to Trevor Rosenthal, Jason Mott, Ryan Helsley, Riley O'Brien. They've been really good at that. I'm not worried about that long term. This year it would be a problem. This year it'd be like, who closes? What are we going to do? Maybe they give Gastelum a look, right? Maybe he's the guy that because of his, he's young, he gets a look. Or maybe they just go by committee and see who takes it. I mean, that's how Riley got it. Right. He wasn't just given it. He worked his way into it. So, if somebody's going to say, boy, we really could use that arm, we have a chance to win the World Series, here are a couple of really high-quality young guys that either are blocked in our system or they're a little bit further away, and, you guys can make it work. I would never hesitate in that regard. Now, if Riley were 26, my song would be different.
Yep, totally
But when he's
agree.
31, I'm a little more willing to listen.
Yeah, no, you make great points, and they all kind of echo kind of where I am with it. As like, I want them to look at the opportunity, be opportunistic. Look at what might be available, what might be out there. We know that teams at this time of year are super overly aggressive for those late inning relievers, and so if you can do something to give yourself an even greater shot in the arm in terms of young talent, I'm not going to say he's worth the Mason Miller type return, but if you can get 70-80% of that type of a return,
If
you
you get
absolutely
50% of that, you'd be awesome.
You absolutely jump on that opportunity and you cash in. And then you figure out the rest later, right? But, you mentioned something about catcher setup and all of that. Let's talk about Ivan Herrera. He had been doing nothing of impact for the last 3 weeks or so. So the last couple of days, he's been showing some really positive signs in terms of the batted ball profile. Kevin, I look at Herrera as the single most important bat to get going in the second half. Do you agree with that sentiment, or do you have someone else in mind?
No, they need him. Your other front end bats haven't really wavered, right? Weatherholt, Walker, and Burleson have just been doing their thing. They've been pretty consistent, and I think Herrera will be fine. It's been a rough month for sure. It probably even stretches back more than 30 days. It's been going on for a while now, where the power just kind of disappeared for a bit. But it's not a huge change in terms of his bat speed from last year to this year. It's down, but it's not down enough for me to worry too much. It's down a few tenths of a mile an hour, which can make a difference, but it's not the biggest thing in the world. He was they were talking about it on the broadcast, and he was saying his mechanics got a little bit out of whack, and he wasn't able to drive power. So sometimes you make a small adjustment, and maybe that adjustment works, or maybe you just think it works. And psychologically, you start to calm down and stop pressing. Doesn't matter which. Both of those things are effective things. And I'm not worried about the bat. He does so much well with the bat, right? He draws walks. He doesn't chase. He takes long at bats. He can drive in runs now. He's been batting fourth the last couple days. If you're in that spot, he'll drive in runs because he'll put the ball in play with runners in scoring position, kind of like Burleson does. It's just the defense just doesn't work. It's again, for this year, it's fine. I at the beginning of the year, the way I put it with him was, if you were trying to win 88, 92 games and make the playoffs, I don't want him behind the plate. Right. in this kind of a year where you're just kind of like, let's see what happens because we're stage 2 of a rebuild. Okay, hey, let's see what it looks like a couple of games a week. He's been able to stay on the field, which is good, right? Last couple of years, you get a little, once he'd catch, he'd have knee problems or whatever, but he's been able to stay on the field, so that's good. But when you can't throw anybody out, you just can't be back there all the time. And while I think he's actually a really good game caller, I like the way he thinks as a catcher.
I agree.
He's great with the challenges. He really seems to have a good feel for setting hitters up and, kind of working with the plan, but also adapting as it goes. I think he's impressed me with that. I didn't know that was going to be very good because it hadn't been in the past. But he's the worst thrower in the sport behind the plate. His framing numbers aren't good. And, when you look at blocking, he's average to a little bit below average, which is fine. It's not the end of the world. But long-term, that's not your catcher. Long-term, that's a DH first base type guy because, whether Crooks or Bernal or Rodriguez are going to be the long-term catcher is, to me, unknown. But they're all better catchers than he is.
Yeah.
And if he's going to continue to be a number 2 catcher, well, then that locks up your bench. Because now all of a sudden you have to carry 3 catchers, which means that third guy is basically not playing. He's not a pinch hitter. He's not a pinch runner. He's basically just there to play once every 10 or 12 games. And I don't think that's the best way to use a roster, and you're not going to go with one less pitcher. You could, but nobody will, other than maybe a day or two here or there. Everybody's going to go with the full 13 every chance they get. So at some point, they're going to have to move off that to be able to make the roster work better. But then again, first base is taken. Or maybe you can flip those 2 guys, between first and DH, but still, it's the same 2 guys in the same 2 spots. And it's not a bad problem to have. I'd want to have it because Herrera is a hell of a hitter, and the fact that he can catch really does give you some opportunities. I just would like to see it be a little less. Go forward and make him the third catcher. But he's also the everyday DH, right? He's the guy that's going to be in there all the time. I know he probably would hate that idea of being a DH at 26 full-time, but, I mean, when you can't throw anybody out and you're mediocre at best at the other things, at some point those other guys are going to pass you by, and Bernal's knocking down the door, man.
Yep.
He's
Absolutely.
looking great at AAA and won that minor league Gold Glove last year. He's hitting well at AAA. Who knows how it translates, because as we've seen with Crooks, he was putting up big numbers, but it really hasn't translated at the big league level. But, with those 2 guys already present on that level, and then, Rodriguez, one of the rising young stars in the sport, something's going to have to change here in the next year or 2 anyway.
Yeah, Gabe, I'm gonna throw kind of your impressions, throw it over to you for your impressions of Herrera. I don't have the physical time to create a graphic every single day, but it seems as though every time I say something critical about Ivan Herrera online, he goes out and has an incredible offensive game, and you make reference to that as well as like talk crap about Herrera, do it, he's gonna hit well. So like, what do you see for Herrera, like? Because my impression is that, kind of along the lines of what Kevin is talking about, it's not going to work long-term behind the plate. It just isn't. You need a guy who can catch it. Like, if anything in this current day and age of baseball with the ABS challenge, not that framing is less important, it still is, or it's not important, but it is less important than it once was. You really need to be a good catch and throw guy. And we see that from a Pedro Pajes. The unfortunate, drawback to Pedro Pajes is that he can't seem to hit anything rather consistently. And that kind of draws away from him having the ability to be the primary catcher every day, even though he has like 16 thrown out runners. And he has like one of the strongest arms defensively in baseball from behind the plate. Like he can't hit enough to play consistently. And so
he also doesn't keep the ball in front of him very well.
Okay, and so you brought that up a little bit ago, and you mentioned the same thing with Herrera having poor blocking numbers, and I kind of got into this discussion a little bit online on Facebook of all places, because Facebook fans are the best. The discussion was around like Herrera, like the catcher's inability to block the ball when it's in the dirt, and I'm sure there is a combination of the two where the catcher didn't also, properly move to block the ball. But how much can we also attribute the poor command and execution of the pitcher not, executing his pitches in the moment? Like whenever you're set up inside and he spikes that slider down and away, like that much having to move to block a ball or whatever. Like how much of that ultimately falls on the catcher, and then how much of that is, hey, the pitcher also isn't executing his pitches. He's not putting them in the proper places where he's supposed to.
Well, as a guy that caught and a guy that coaches catching, I will never blame a catcher when it's the pitcher's fault, ever. Okay,
Right.
So when you take, I'm not talking about any. You're talking about any of those scuds that have been thrown up there. What was it, a couple starts ago when Dustin May had no idea where the ball's going.
Yeah,
I'm not putting that on the catcher. I'm talking when I talk about blocks and what you should get. I'm talking about the ones that you should get. I'm talking
when you
about
call
the
for
ones,
it
I'm talking about the ones that are within your range laterally to move, whether you're in a one knee down or not. I'm talking about the ball straight at you, staying in front of you instead of kicking off to the side. That's how I'm looking at it. I'm not, I know the overall numbers, and I cite them because it's easier than just taking notes and writing everything down.
Right.
So is Pages as bad a blocker as the StatCast numbers look? No, probably not. Probably not. But there are too many with men in scoring position on balls that he should get that he doesn't. And, that's an eye test thing. I'm sure, the team probably disagrees with me. That's fine. And maybe it's just a matter of, all these years seeing the best in the world do it. But I don't just watch the Cardinals. I mean, I probably watch 5 games a day. And I watch it. I mean, I have a particular focus on catchers. First of all, they're right in the shot every shot. So
Right.
It's hard to miss if there's something happening right there. And it's just it's a passion of mine. I always pay attention to it. So it's not a matter of not liking these guys. I do think that the wildness of a May or a Liberatore when they're off, or the bullpen guys, for God's sake.
Yeah.
You got a bunch of bullpen guys throwing 97, and they don't always know where it's going. Stanek, Swanson, Riley lately. Right? So this is not an uncommon thing, and that is hard for a catcher. I'm not blaming them for those things. I'm talking about the things they should handle.
Yeah, as the Cardinals, you're wrong, Kevin. So take that, Gabe. Over to you. Your general thoughts on Herrera and kind of what you see for him long term.
Well, Herrera is kind of in the wrong organization to stay a catcher a little bit, because I could see if we were more desperate, like in some of the lean, like we had Yachty obviously, but some of those lean years where we just had no catching behind Yachty, it was kind of incredible. Then maybe he could be the second catcher. But like you said, like everybody's a better defender than him. Like literally everybody around him is a better defender than him. And in some respects, I also think that Pedro Paz is in the wrong organization. He's a great backup catcher.
Yeah, he is.
He's a great backup catcher.
Yeah.
But like, how do you keep, like, he has no real potential at the same time. And you got Jimmy Crooks, and who I think his batted ball metrics are a lot more positive about how he's been offensively. Although I have been pretty disappointed with him defensively, as much as I could grade.
He's been awful on the blocks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Awful.
like
And that was my understanding from people that have watched him was that that's not normal.
Yeah, like there's a play earlier today with Swanson, which was really wild, but then I thought he could have caught it, and then that allowed the runner to go from second to third in the 10th inning. Not that it ended up mattering because a bunch of other hits ended up happening. But, yeah, I think that this might just be like I don't know, like a nerves thing or something. I don't like maybe just like when
Honestly,
you first.
I'm going to defend Crooks for one way. They're not playing him enough.
Okay.
He doesn't play enough, and it's driving me crazy. Because you're right. You look at his batted ball metrics. He's been super unlucky compared to the when Pages out there. So the first 3 months, Pages basically played 60% of the games because Herrera was only catching 2 out of 5, and he was catching and Pages was catching the rest. But that's not happening for Crooks. They got to play him. But every time there's a lefty, he's going to sit. And if there happens to be a righty or a lefty, especially on the day that it's not a big deal on the day that Herrera's going to catch, because Herrera's going to catch that day anyway. But then if Pages is going to eat into some of those against lefties, well, first of all, how is Crooks ever going to show you if he can hit lefties if he doesn't get to do it? And how are you ever going to establish consistency when you're not out there? You're out there twice a week, and I understand why. I get it. They're trying to win games. They think Pages gives them a better chance on those days against left-handers to win the game. I understand that they think that. I'm not sure that I agree. But when I look at it this month, I mean, Pages has almost the same number of at-bats that Crooks has, and I don't understand it. I don't understand. I thought we did this and moved on from that, but apparently not.
It's interesting because when you think about it, like with Herrera taking over Matthew Liberatore's starts, like we had referenced earlier, and he's also still catching McGreevy and Palante, it seems like Herrera has taken that 60% chunk, and then based off of handedness, Pages and Crooks are kind of alternating in some sort of like split time platoon, which isn't really benefiting either of them. So like we're gonna get into some of the more trade stuff talk later in the show, but it kind of seems like there are too many cooks in the kitchen for this to all kind of work itself out, or for you to be able to get the kind of answers that are necessary, for moving forward. Burley continues to chug along and do his thing, kind of like you talked about, Kevin. JJ seemingly a 10-year vet as a rookie, and you can see how even-keeled he is, whether he hits 2 home runs in a game or is 0 for 4. Like, it's incredibly impressive what he has shown. Mason Wynn has been more consistent lately, not a ton of slug, but he also admitted to us early in the year that's not really his focus on the game right now. And then Blaze Jordan, who also isn't necessarily slugging right now, but has been better than expected at third base defensively, and he is putting the ball in play, which was a refreshing bit after watching Gorman every night of the infielders. Who is standing out to you guys most right now?
I mean, boy, outside of the big guys, the main 3, and then eventually, I think Herrera will be fine. Nobody. And that's kind of what's disappointing to me. Newt's been awful since the start of July. Who's been okay is Fermin, because he's just a utility guy, but he's been, I think, everything you'd want him to be. But Nathan Church has been awful. He's hitting $125 this month. And, Mason Wynn's hitting $197. I don't know. This is the 3rd year of decline in a row for Wynn offensively. Yeah. So 2024, he was good. 15 home runs, double-digit steals, 730-ish OPS, and then it was 670 last year, and now it's about 640. And I don't think you need him to hit, but if he's going to bat 6th, that's not good
my
enough.
Big thing.
If he's hitting 9th, that's fine. It's totally fine.
It's kind
if
of
he's
where I
hitting
think,
9th.
but whatever.
But the problem is that Crooks isn't hitting when he's playing, or at least actually he's got almost a 900 OPS in July. I don't know. Again, I don't know. It's almost all the 2 home runs that he hit, but
2 home runs, 2 doubles, and he has like 10 at bats this month.
Yeah,
so
he's got
it's
25 at bats. But
yeah.
again, I'd love to see them give him a little bit more. But Velasquez has done nothing. Blaze Jordan has done nothing. Obviously Pages doesn't hit when he's in there. So my problem is less with Wynn than it is where you need him to hit right now, and he should be hitting 8th or 9th. And if he does that and plays Gold Glove defense, okay, no problem. I think it's still weird that he continues to get worse offensively. I don't understand it. Maybe something changed with the way his body moves with the back injuries and the knee injuries, and he's working to kind of figure that out. He seems off balance a lot to me at the plate, where he's reaching for pitches and he puts the ball in play, but he probably shouldn't. But the crazy thing is he's got some good traits, man. He doesn't chase. He doesn't strike out a lot. He draws a fair number of walks. I think there are pieces there that show that he can be better, but it's not better, and it's not getting any better as the season goes along. I don't care if Blaze Jordan puts the ball in play. He has one real tool, and it's bat speed. If he's not hitting for damage, he's not helping you. He's not a good defender. He can't run. So other than the situation, I'll tell you where he's really good. You guys know this already. Where he's really good is runner on third base, get him in. He drives in runs. He does that incredibly well. I love that. That is such a great thing, and it's such a forgotten thing in Major League Baseball to just be like, all right, hey, all I need to do is hit this ball in the outfield. All I need to do is hit a ground ball somewhere. This run scores. He's really good at that. But at some point, he's got to stop swinging. Yeah. He's got to stop swinging at everything. The path for him is the same as it was for Jordan Walker. As long as he's going to swing at everything, he's just not going to hit enough hard, and he's not going to do enough damage to be out there. He's out there now because you don't have any other choice. They don't have another option. Torres can't play there. Fermin doesn't hit enough to play there on a regular basis. Gorman stinks at Memphis right now.
Hit another home run today, but
yeah, I mean, he's hitting home runs. He's just not hitting anything else.
Yeah.
Last I checked, he was hitting like $150.
Yeah.
But yeah, he'll hit the occasional home run. But the problem here with Blaze, and this is, look, I'm okay with giving him the run. He's new to Major League Baseball. Maybe he just needs to keep doing it and failing at it to figure out how to do it better, kind of like Jordan Walker did. He's not at that level, but you get what I'm saying. So again, we're kind of now where we were right at the end of May, where like 6, 7, 8, 9 on a given day just aren't giving you anything.
It's a problem. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't rely only on 4 guys. And you notice when you looked at when Newt first came back and he was really, really good, what did it do to the lineup? When Nathan Church first got that playing time, you go look at what he did in June. He had like almost an 800 OPS in June. I think even Wynn had a decent month of June. The whole lineup looked different with just a couple more guys providing just a little bit more. And now we're back to where it was at the end of May, where you just got 4 guys and that's it.
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
I was going to say, you compared Blaze Jordan's struggles to Jordan Walker. I would actually compare it to Alec Burleson.
It's a fair one, except Burley was always more productive than Blaze.
Well, yeah, when
the
Burley,
swing and the chase profile.
Yeah, right. He's a swinger. You're right. Yeah.
Burley needed to learn when to swing good pitches to hit and when not to swing at bad pitches. And
that may be the better comp because he may end up being more like Burleson as a hitter. Yeah.
I almost kind of wonder if maybe he belongs as like the weak side platoon for Burleson, even though Burley is like 6 for his last 20 against left-handed. So he's showing improvement against left-handed pitching. May not need that platoon partner, but that's still kind of working itself. Just to note that he's been better lately.
Yeah, he's been doing a much better job lately.
Go ahead, Gabe. I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, I was going to say like the overall numbers for Burley against lefties. I would hopefully they should plan to have a platoon partner with him. I think in the future though. Maybe not the rest of this year, but
by that time, are they looking to move him?
I would hope not.
That's the other debate. To trade him, I mean, I kind of feel like you need to trade him or Herrera, but
I would trade Herrera.
Well, given what Curtis Meade just got, and that guy can't play
That's
defense.
one thing to note, yes. But also the scarcity, and this is going to lead into our next topic, which is, it wouldn't be a baseball podcast in July if we didn't jump on the trade deadline stuff. So we'll start with Herrera rather than where I had planned to start with Dustin May. But a lot of reporting you're seeing coming out is that teams are hyper focused on getting right-handed power bats. That's the deficiency, one of the deficiencies across the league right now. And you have in Ivan Herrera, like Gabe back in April, whenever we had Eno Saris on the show with us, he talked about. Because we even asked him, does the catching improve trade value for him? And his answer was no. Because a playoff contender, kind of like what Kevin had referenced, if you're a 90-92 win team, you're not putting him behind the plate. If a playoff team is looking to acquire Ivan Herrera, they're not looking to do it so he can catch. They're looking for that impact right-handed, bat to install in their lineup. And so a lot of these teams are looking for what he provides. And like you referenced, the Nationals just got Connolly early for Curtis Meade, who's in his own right having a great breakout year. Yeah. I asked the question to a few of my friends, like just kind of off the air. I was like, I don't think the Mariners would do this necessarily. I know that the Emerson Hancock name is floating out there. I'm not doing it for Emerson Hancock. No, thank you. But if a Bryce Miller was available for an Ivan Herrera, is that something that you're willing to jump at? The control remaining is comparable. Each team, it fits better what their needs are long term. Cardinals need a starter that they can install at the top of the rotation. The Mariners are said to be looking for that right-handed bat. They're also looking for an impact reliever. So, I mean, maybe you could package him and Riley together. But my question is, like, if a Bryce Miller were dangled in a package for Ivan Herrera, is that something that you're gonna jump on and try to improve your team that way with the asset that you have?
I wouldn't even blink. That's a yes.
Yeah,
that's what I thought as well.
And that's why Seattle wouldn't do it. Plus, I'm not sure they need a DH.
Well,
I
could imagine
Naylor at first base. Ken Zone's been playing a lot of DH, and he's putting up great numbers. Now he's a lefty, but I mean, like, where do they put him? Because that's the big question.
I would think that they would kind of rotate kind of similar to what they're doing in St. Louis. They would kind of rotate between him and Raleigh, kind of taking those DH opportunities. Whoever's not catching that
because Raleigh, you're right. Raleigh's going to play every day, whether he catches or DHs. He's playing every day.
Exactly.
And if you're looking at against right-handed pitching, I guess it could mean that Raley finds the bench, but Raley is streaky and can hit a lot of home runs. They might be more apt to want to do it with somebody that plays a position.
I think that their idea is that they want to swap. Now, I could be wrong on this. I think they want to swap one of their pitchers, not necessarily like their very best, but like one of the guys that kind of falls into that second tier in their rotation for a controllable right-handed bat with some thump, and I think that Ivan Herrera could fit that. I also think that, again, like I said, I think he could work in with Raleigh and kind of alternate between DH and catching whoever isn't that night. I think
it's also a hard thing to do to jump into a pennant race as a catcher with a new staff.
Yeah.
I mean,
but again,
if you're a part-time catcher, maybe it's not as big a deal. Yeah.
I mean, who's their current backup catcher? Isn't it like Mitch Garver or something? Like somebody who's not providing hardly anything to them from an offensive or a defensive perspective. So I don't think that it would be that dramatic of a hindrance or change from what they're getting from Mitch Garver. And you could even argue it's an upgrade offensively from what they're getting from him. So, I could see.
I think they would like to add a shortstop if they could. They're not getting anything out of Crawford, and I know Emerson's going to take over there at some point.
Yeah,
but,
that was going to be my point.
And I don't mean. I mean, again, I don't think that it's not a fit. I think it can be a fit, but it's not a simple fit for them unless they're willing to take one of their left-handed bats and say you're just a bench guy.
Right.
Because Herrera,
or maybe they try to.
You're bringing in Herrera and you're giving up a pitcher. He's everyday player. He's not coming
unless you look to use one of those left-handed bats to go get you that reliever.
Maybe get a bullpen guy.
So it may just be the first step in a multi. And then the whole picture comes together and makes more sense.
Yeah, could be.
Let's jump over to Dustin May. Dustin May has potentially made his final start for St. Louis, though I'd imagine after the long stretch of instability that he just had, contending teams probably will want to see him one more time just for their own sake. But again, if the right offer comes across Bloom's desk, I don't think he'd hesitate. Do you think that we've seen the last of Dustin May, or do you think that the likelihood is they run him out one more time for those acquiring teams to kind of to satiate any kind of questions they have to give that final piece that will put it over the top?
I don't think they'll do something. I mean, anything can happen. I wouldn't anticipate him getting moved before his next start comes out, just because of the time frame. And some of this is also going to be teams reading the rest of the market, right? So if you're the Dodgers, if you're the Rays, if you're the Brewers, and all those teams are supposedly looking at starting pitchers, you're probably going to want to make sure you're not going to miss out on Tarek Skubal before you move on to another starter. Right. Now, that, again, doesn't mean that everybody is going to want to swim in those deep waters, and the guy may not even be available. But I think it probably gets pushed closer to the deadline, not because of anything with May. And I think teams that like him are going to like him. I don't think his performance lately bothers them. I don't think if he's good or bad in his next one, it'll bother them, because they're going to look at body of work, stuff, and they can see what we've seen, right? I mean, this guy has made, 20 starts this year?
Yeah.
He's had 5 terrible ones and 14 or 15 really good ones.
Right.
They're going to like that percentage, and they're going to like the fact that he's taking the bump every 5th day, and that when you look at a playoff spot, he's probably your 4th starter if you're a really good playoff team, maybe your 3rd if you're, a step below. But, man, he's got that electric stuff where if he's on in that scenario, you're okay with it. And he's pitched in the postseason with the Dodgers. I think he has value. I think there's a lot there. And I would be surprised if what happens with him in the next outing changes the demand one way or the other. The question is just going to be which of the bigger arms get moved? Is Skubal available? Is Casey Mize available? Is Kevin Gossman available? If those guys are available, they all rank ahead of Dustin May, and that's why I think it gets pushed back. It's less about him and the Cardinals, and much more
about what's out there.
Like, okay, how high are these teams shooting? And look, there might be somebody who says, yeah, we're not going to waste all that time. We're not going to be dealing with that. We're not going to bid against the Dodgers. We're not going to bid against all these other teams. But we can get Dustin May now. Let's do it. It could happen that way. It wouldn't be a complete shock. And there are a lot of teams that need pitching. So I would anticipate there will be pretty good offers for him. And then it just comes down to whether it's good enough for the Cardinals to say, okay, well, this guy's been one of our better starters, but hey, we got to make room for Hunter Dobbins and Quinn Matthews and these guys at some point anyway. And we're teetering on the edge. There's no knowing for sure whether or not those other guys will be better or worse than what May's been so far.
Well, I'm glad you went back and kind of referenced, Hunter Dobbins and Quinn Matthews needing spots, because that kind of leads me to the next player that I wanted to kind of touch on. Andre Palante, his value likely will never be higher than it is right now. And I don't mean that disparagingly. He's been a rock solid mid-rotation starter this season. And with multiple years of control remaining at a super affordable rate, I can see a lot of teams having sincere interest if the Cardinals were to make him available. Now, I get that because he has years of control remaining, he's 27 years old. You would think maybe he's more in line to be more of the long-term stable force in the middle of that rotation. But if somebody came along and offered you something you couldn't refuse, I could see, and with how in demand teams are, and of course also adding in the context of the overarching CBA potentially, maybe some teams don't want to invest in a rental or a player with just 1.5 years of control remaining. Maybe they want somebody with 2 to 3 years of control remaining, so they feel like they get multiple bites of the apple if they're more inclined to believe that maybe next season will be more impacted than you or I are thinking, Kevin.
I don't know. I mean, if somebody came at me with a good offer, I would definitely think about it. He's only got 2 more years of team control. This was his first ARB year, so he's got ARB2 next year, ARB3, and then he's free.
Super 2. He's got 4 years of ARB.
Yeah, so he's one of those guys that, well, then he's also going to start getting expensive because he's $4 million now, coming off a good year, which means he's going to be 8 next year, which means probably 11 or 12 the year after that and 15 the year after that. Again, those are fine numbers for a guy that's a stable starter. And 2 of the last 3 years, he's been a stable starter. 1 year he was bad, but the other 2 of the last 3, he's been pretty good. But he's also the kind of guy. He's more likely a 4th starter than anything else. And if you're starting to look at the system, you're looking at a whole bunch of dudes, whether it's Liam Doyle or Quinn Matthews or Durangelo Saincha or Roby when he comes back. Cooper Jerpy is healthy again. Mason Molina. You got a lot of pitching. So it all depends. It's all about, what do they come at me with? If somebody comes at me with a third baseman who, maybe isn't a top 100 prospect, but he's a major league player, I'd have to listen.
Sure.
I'm not saying I'm trying to move him. I'm not making calls to move him, but you got to listen.
Yeah, I'd be curious I have no idea what teams would value him as, because he usually starting pitchers who don't strike people out probably aren't going to – if he was the same exact pitcher but he had a 25% K rate, we might be having a different discussion.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to move him.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I think his last year of arbitration will probably be approaching $10 million or so, which I think a team would say that there's no trade value there. That last year doesn't count for me, because I'm getting surplus value if he's as good as he is this year, it will be surplus value. But maybe you're thinking, I'm only counting this year, next year, because I might end up non-tendering him in that last year because his price is a little high if he has an off.
10-12's nothing. That's a 5th starter in free agency.
Depends on who acquires him, of course.
For a $10 to $12 million guy who's a 5th starter. Or wouldn't trade anything
it'd have to be one
significant.
of the big boys, but those are the ones that are Philly's kind of team that we'd be looking at him, right? Philly doesn't need anybody in their top 3. They just need somebody to get them through. And they probably need that next year too. So for those kind of teams, that's fine. For a lower level team, you're right. It could be
the thing is also.
So I would absolutely trade him if they get a legitimate top 10 team prospect probably, and maybe a lower. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know what teams would value him, so I have to answer that question.
The thing is, you referenced him not having that elite strikeout ability, but he does have outlier ground ball ability. So there is still something that he does better than everyone else that you would be acquiring for. So I think it's less sexy than the swing and miss stuff, but I do think that would carry a lot of value, especially like Kevin had mentioned with a Philadelphia and how their ballpark plays. Having a guy who can stay on the ground a lot could be something that would be really interesting to them. I also kind of thought of Sacramento and that ballpark, and the A's are flush with young hitters, and so like you mentioned, They could get a third base type. I saw our good friend Thomas Gavain of Redbird Rants float out an idea of like Zach Geloff for. I'm not saying I'm personally interested in Zach Geloff, but something like that, who is currently at the major leagues, who could be installed immediately. And we talked about the Cardinals only kind of having half a lineup. If you could, immediately install that next piece to kind of help you now, I think that would be beneficial. And again, I'm not so locked in on Zach Geloff specifically, but that type of framework for an immediate MLB player would be something that I would have interest in. Sure. Kind of like what we saw with Connolly early for Curtis Mead.
Yeah. Something along those lines would be the way I would listen to it, right?
Yeah.
Because if it's for a quality high A prospect, I think you're in a setup now with your system where
I agree.
That's not your priority.
You're not looking
you loaded
for
up
that.
last offseason. Your system's deep. You just had a great draft. I don't need a 19-year-old. I mean, I'm not saying, look, if you're going to offer me a 19-year-old stud, okay. But I mean,
if it's Grady Emerson, not that he's capable, but like,
No.
yes. Yeah, but yes.
I mean, if you're going to be talking to me about, I don't know, one of those, this is not going to happen because the Giants aren't going to do it, but one of their young shortstops, because they got 3 of them.
Yeah,
right? You got Johnny Lavelle, you've got Hernandez, and then you've got the other guy whose name is
Gonzalez.
And Gonzalez, right? So you got, if it's like that kind of guy, sure, but that's not going to happen. Nobody's doing that for a 4th or 5th starter.
The bullpen offers some intrigue across the league, right? Stanek is probably gone, to Gabe's chagrin, I'm sure. JoJo's appendix threw a wrench in things, but teams probably will still inquire about him. And then the 2 big wild cards in my mind are Riley O'Brien and George Soriano. I'd imagine the Cardinals would have to be pretty wowed, kind of like we talked about, to move either of them. But it is the deadline, and the Cardinals should be open to just about anything that's presented to them. What are your guys' thoughts on bullpen pieces and like what the Cardinals have to offer across the league? Obviously, with Stanek, you have a guy with extreme walk profile, but also has really good strikeout, swing and miss stuff. JoJo, solid, dependable lefty. I think in a playoff bullpen, he's probably more likely a second lefty out of a bullpen rather than like their primary leverage reliever, because of more of a ground ball pitcher than a strikeout guy. Typically, playoff bullpens want strikeout guys. So that's kind of how I think he'd be valued across the league, more as a second lefty for most teams. And then, again, I think the one name that you guys would probably push back on is Soriano, but I also think that, like, if you're looking at this as with opportunistic eyes, you can't necessarily just automatically write that off. I think that, you did your job, you brought in this ball of clay, you got the most out of him and are getting the most out of him, and now could you get something else interesting in return for him that has more upside going forward?
I don't know.
I mean, I would say with Soriano, though, I'm not convinced this is his highest value. His stats overall are just kind of okay. And I know, like, there's probably a team that could look at what he's done and been like, he could be a high leverage reliever for us, but I don't know that the offers will be. I feel like if you're like trying to maximize his value, there might be more to come. I don't know. I feel like he could look like a better reliever in the future because of his changeup, and I don't know what caused his issues in the past because he was really bad in previous years. But I would be surprised if he can go from being essentially a waiver claim to somebody who would get a deadline later. So I'm just skeptical about what teams will be offering for George Soriano, and I'm I guess a little bit optimistic that he can either look like an equal or better reliever in the future, which with that kind of team control, I don't think you're damaging your return that much. Because 5 years versus 4 years for a reliever, I don't think it matters that much.
Sure, but if you're also factoring in that same optimism that you say you're having, perhaps a team is looking to get in before the cost goes all the way up, like you're saying that
their interest would be contingent upon Cardinals accepting an okay deal. That's just what
it may not, and maybe they try to get in with something better than what you expect. You know what I'm saying? And so that's what I'm saying is you be open to them willing to pay that higher price tag than probably you would have thought he'd be able to get, because they think that they can get that even next level out of him for it.
Yeah, but I'd be surprised if anybody gave you the offer that you're thinking of.
I'm not thinking that highly, to be honest with you, but I am thinking
my value for as a team. I got a 26-year-old guy. I have almost no bullpen beyond this year. that's proven or known. My price, if I'm the Cardinals, my price on him is higher than anybody would pay.
Sure.
It's not a matter of whether or not I would move him. And to me, the only difference between him and O'Brien is that Riley is 31. If Soriano was 31,
Soriano's 26.
He's right there with him, and I'm like, hey.
Sure.
But the fact that he's 5 years younger, it's not that I'm trying to say that you wouldn't move him. Of course, there's always an offer. There's always one that you're like, yeah, I'll move a reliever for that. But if I'm the team, if I'm the Cardinals, my price for trading him is probably higher than that for Riley O'Brien. I'm not advertising that if I'm the team.
Right.
I mean, I want everybody to think I got a high price on everybody. But the age factor, and then just the fact that O'Brien's had so many physical problems. I mean, it was a year and a half after they got him before he actually, got to the big leagues and was able to kind of show what he was capable of. It's those factors that would make me more willing. But I don't know that anybody's going to make you an offer on him that would make it worth your while. Because you could wait. Hey, he's 31 now.
Yep.
Okay, he's still only 31 the first half of next year and 32 next year. And if it's the same situation and contenders need somebody and he's good again, there's no rush. So, yeah, I think to your point, if anybody comes at you about any of your guys in the bullpen and they're making you the offer that's like, man, we'd be stupid to turn that down, well, then you take it.
Right. And I want to be clear that I'm not just jonesing to get rid of everybody, but these are the same kinds of conversations that are happening in big league front offices currently as we speak. Because who are we willing to move? What are the packages we're willing to move them for? These are all the so that's why I think this is really helpful and interesting for the context of the conversation that we're having, is because
if I'm this team, I'm not moving 5 or 6 guys.
Right.
Because 5 or 6 guys, your season's over. You're going to fall off a cliff.
The conversation is still being had was my overarching point.
Right. I'm looking at, okay, I might trade a couple relievers. If I'm getting offers for Stanek and Romero, well, sure, because they're gone at the end of the year. I'll absolutely move them. I'm talking about moving May, and we've got guys that can slot into that. But if I'm going to go beyond that, I'd probably go beyond it if it's Newt. But if I'm going to go beyond that with the pitching, who's pitching for me in the last 2 months?
Man, Kevin's so good because the transition next is Lars Nootbaar is probably the most gettable offensive piece the team has, but with only being back for about 8 weeks, is that enough track record for some teams to tamp down the concern of the medicals, or do you think that it's probably more of an off-season move and teams just won't give up enough at the deadline for him?
Boy, it's a good question. To me, it comes down to what each individual team has always thought about him. Do they look at – because you look at – this is true every year. You go look at his StatCast page, and you're like, man, it's all red. Everything's red. It looks great. But why don't the numbers match it? And the numbers never match. His real-life numbers never match the batted ball numbers. Even in 2024 when he was pretty good, right, 759 OPS, his underlying numbers said he should have been better, right? So if you look at his weighted on base these last 3 years, every year – the real numbers are below the batted ball numbers. There's got to be something to that if it happens every year. And I think some of it is maybe just that he's too passive. He's got a great eye, but, I mean, God, the other day, he just took a 3-1 fastball right down the middle.
Yeah, drove
and then got
nuts.
called out on the 3-2. Like, brother, you got to swing the bat with the bases loaded.
Especially if you're hitting fifth, yeah.
Right, so if it's a team that loves batted ball data and they've always had their eye on him, they probably do still value him because he's running well. He doesn't look at all diminished by the surgery. His speed is fine. It's about league average. You put him in a corner outfield spot, he's fine. His arm is strong. He can play right just as easily as he can play left. So it really just depends on each team and what they've always thought about him. If they liked him all along, they probably like him now. And if they've been waiting to see it, well, then they're probably not that interested because the last month has been pretty awful.
I'd be curious if you guys could kind of look this up for me right now. What are his home road splits? Because I wonder how much that maybe Busch might be tamping down some of his performance numbers. I understand the concept of him being too overly passive, but I also wonder if is he doing worse on the road than he is at home?
No, he's actually the only guy that's better at home. He's got an 861 OPS at Busch Stadium and a 564 on the road. He's like the
there goes
only
that
guy
argument.
on the team. He's the I didn't think I would never have thought that. I didn't know it till 5 seconds ago when I pulled up StatCast. He is like the only guy on the team that's better at home than he is on the road.
Don't trade him. You got to keep him now.
What the heck's going on, man? That is bizarre. Now,
My
keeping in
goodness.
mind that, the Bush is tougher on righties than it is on lefties.
Yeah.
And I haven't looked at Burley's home road. I'm guessing he's better on the road, too. But it definitely is something that impacts the right-handers way more than it impacts the left-handers, at least seemingly. Let's see, here you go. Burley. Yeah, Burley at home is still a 775 OPS. Still pretty good. He's better on the road. He's 868 on the road, but he's still pretty good at Bush. I don't think there's a coincidence. I think JJ's pretty similar too, although I haven't looked it up. But I do think Bush is way more of a problem for righties than lefties, and seems pretty clear with those two guys at least that it happens to be that way. If you're looking at JJ, he's way better on the road. So it's not perfect. My lefty righty thing's not perfect, but I know it's weird that Newt's been that good at home but not good on the road.
So
JJ's pretty stark.
Yeah, it's huge. 200 points in OPS. Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Don't trade him.
No,
We just
God.
extended him. Don't trade him. No.
He just gave him the 8-year deal. He's going nowhere.
Yeah.
Other names I could see the Cardinals willing to dangle would include, I heard this on the radio, your old protege, Brandon Kiley, brought this up. Maybe Nelson Velasquez is a name that might have some appeal to other teams. Right-handed power, again, that kind of falls in line with that. Not necessarily somebody you're looking for to start necessarily, but if you think back to kind of like, not an exact comparable because he was a better hitter consistently, but kind of like that Steve Pearce, the right-handed bat who could come off the bench and kind of give you some impact down the stretch for a playoff team. I could kind of see a Nelson Velasquez providing some value. Teams are supposedly desperate for those right-handed bats. Does Pedro Pajes or Jimmy Crooks make sense for another squad? We kind of touched on that. Can Bloom be opportunistic with the catchers because you have Bernal and Rodriguez, like you mentioned, Kevin, not that far away. I feel like the Cardinals could do a lot of things if the right deal came along.
Yeah, if Pajes had offers, I'd move him. He makes a lot of sense for the Dodgers as an example. Although he probably isn't on their playoff roster, right? Because if Will
Yankees
Smith's back,
too.
Yeah, Yankees too. There are plenty of teams that could use him that don't have a backup that's as good as he is. But again, I don't think that gets you a whole lot. And again, that's fine. I can do it. I'm not worried about the catching in this organization because they're loaded. But I wouldn't expect a big return on it.
It doesn't have to necessarily be.
Velasquez needs to hit something if he's going to be tradable, man.
He's been terrible lately.
2 hits this month with 13 strikeouts and 27 at bats, and he's completely fallen off the face of the earth.
I would kind of think of him as kind of like one of those names you see pop up kind of like after the buzzer where another team was just like, okay, we kind of just need this one little piece to kind of help us out here, and they just kind of push it off until the last series.
What am I getting for him? You could look at it like if you're probably just going to get like cash or some low-level 18-year-old to be named later. The comp that we're talking about here is probably a guy like Jemai Jones, and basically Detroit just gave him to Boston because they were done with him because he was terrible, and now he's hitting in Boston. But he's that guy, right? Jemai Jones is not going to play regularly. He's not going to face any righties. He can't play a position. So they're similar guys in that regard. But they didn't get anything for him. It was basically just, here, take him. Okay.
Yeah. Kevin, thank you as always for joining us tonight, man. You're the best. We're at 1 hour and 17 minutes, so I appreciate you. I appreciate your time.
If nothing else, guys, I can cover a lot of time, man.
Yeah.
I do 5 hours a day, and I got more in the tank.
We had a lot of not a lot. We had a few fans who were complaining about trying to keep it under 45 minutes. Well, we blew right past that bad
just
boy
divide
right
it into
there.
2, you'll be okay.
Nah. No, we've got good committed fans who really need that long extended time to listen to things. So this is just going to be one of those big hoss pieces that we put out. We're so happy to do it. Thank you, Kevin. We really appreciate your time for hopping on with us tonight.
Always glad to do it, man. One thing I can provide is volume of words, volume in terms of the audio levels.
I talk a lot and I talk really loud.
That's it. All
Got it.
all the time. Yep.
Once again, you can listen to Kevin all the time on KMOX during the DGS Redbird Rush Hour, or occasionally you can hear him on Sports Open Line. Just don't talk about Chris Kerber to him. And thank you so much
mean
for
to my
joining
guys,
us.
man. And also, don't hijack the show.
That's right. Don't do that. Don't be that guy.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Viva Albertos podcast. Don't forget to rate and review and hit that subscribe button so you're notified every Monday morning. For Gabe Simons, my name is Jake Wood, and we will talk to you all next week and bring you more great Cardinals content. Have a great day, St. Louis, and let's go Cards.